The clan way of war is ironically not a brutal one. Industries aren't meant to be destroyed. Planets aren't meant to be laid waste to. Wars among the clans are organized into a series of engagements, often away from the prizes to be won. This is in essence the Pachal, or Battle Challenge, where both sides bid forces against one another in order to engage in a more civilized war, where only the warriors pay the price for the conflict. Now, this doesn't really include the fact that they view humans as property, or what they do to said property after it is acquired, but it's the spirit that counts. However, there is a mech which displays the brutality of this system through the intensity of these battles. It was built for an idealized war against the barbarians of the Inner Sphere, one which somehow contorted to their views of warfare, while winning it supremely. A terrifying and spectacular monster to behold, its form leaves a grand shadow over anyone who may face its wrath. Clan Smoke Jaguar created a more than intimidating monster when it forged this beast, the Warhawk. A clan assault Omnimech weighing in at 85 tons. The Warhawk is one of the most terrifying battlemechs originally documented in Technical Readout 3050. Given the name Masakari by the Draconis Combine, translating roughly into Battle Axe, this monster represents a level of firepower that the Inner Sphere would struggle to match for almost a decade, and could only do so with heavier tonnage and fully embracing Gauss weaponry. Clan Smoke Jaguar would be the creators of this deadly device, and it would be designed and manufactured explicitly to participate in the clan invasion and liberation of the Inner Sphere. This brutal war machine and its boxy frame would be the apex of pure firepower in many respects, unleashing hellish waves of true horror, first in the clan homeworlds, in the trials after its introduction in 2999, and then on the battlefields of the Free Rosselhague Republic, Draconis Combine, Oberon Confederation, and Federated Commonwealth in the Invasion Corridor. This Jaguar-centric design would be seen across all the invading clans, but it would only be manufactured by the clan of its origins, until disaster struck it due to the assault by the Second Star League in response to the invasion. Many Inner Sphere Mechwarriors would stare down its 4-arm-mounted weapons, which exist in most configurations, before being annihilated by the sheer volume of weaponry on board. To see one of these on the battlefields of the clan invasion is to see a truly deadly adversary. The Warhawk, however, despite its powerful traits, being one of the most devastating clan assault mechs to appear in the invasion in any numbers, simply never manifested the success the clans needed. The clans were not lacking powerful war machines. They had them in spades, and the Warhawk is a perfect example of this. Their problems were manifested in poor battlefield tactics, poor strategies, terrible governance of occupied territories, and worst of all, abysmal logistics capabilities. The clans would be defeated in their initial invasion, and then Clan Smoke Jaguar would be annihilated in the Great Refusal, the only clan to be entirely destroyed from the outside, at least in the 31st century, because in the 32nd century, Clan Novacat would be destroyed at the hands of the Draconis Combine during what is called the Dark Age. This left the machine itself in limbo as the Jaguar territories were divided up. It would be Clan Goliath Scorpion that would eventually take responsibility for the mech and would continue manufacturing it. This meant, however, that the logistics chain for new Masakaris, or for their replacement parts, to the Inner Sphere became almost non-existent for an extended period of time. In the Inner Sphere itself, these 85-ton titans would slowly but surely be eroded away. Those that remained would be a patchwork of armored plating and makeshift replacement parts, before becoming carrion, to be scavenged by the remaining siblings. The Battlemech itself would almost go entirely extinct in the Dark Age and Ilclan eras, at least in the inner sphere. Well past the majority of human space, though, under the control of Clan Goliath Scorpion, the Warhawk would stride through the forces of the Hanseatic League, Caliphate, and Castile in their grand conquest of the deep periphery nations. And now, during the latter ages of Battletech, they are even manufactured there once more. Some newer models and replacement parts slowly but surely can find their way into the inner sphere from time to time, allowing this once near extinct design to simply become critically endangered. It would appear that the Warhawk has some life left in it, even if only barely. An 85-ton clan assault mech, the Warhawk, or Masakari, uses an abundance of advanced technologies in order to save weight and improve performance. This devastating battlemech is renowned for its pure firepower, which the base of the machine is specifically built to accommodate. To begin with, the Warhawk has the second most pod space of any battlemech in the original Technical Readout 3050, and this is because it was built to simply batter and destroy any targets that came before it. It is one of the first, almost template-styled clan assault mechs that would appear in the setting. In essence, its pod space is there to facilitate a battlemech that is going to erode its targets into nothing but ash and bitter memories. To this end, it has a more than commanding 32.5 tons of pod space available. To keep this battlemech cool as well, and in many of its most iconic forms it will struggle to do so, the Masakari has 10 tons of built-in heat sinks, letting it cool 40 every turn. This is normally an exceptional amount. However, even this total can be very inadequate to the task, with the devastating energy weapons it may pack on board. Unlike many of its peers, even though it uses advanced technologies in other spaces, it has a standard internal structure, and due to its age, it has a standard gyro and cockpit. For electronic components, the Warhawk has a Series 10 CBS multi-freak communication system, and a Hawkeye J360 targeting and tracking package. The latter of these gives this mech a devastating bonus when it comes to the advanced rules, because its only quirk is the improved targeting quirk for long range. This means that it hits one better at targets at long distances, and given its typical loadout, this is an extremely dangerous combination, though this only does apply when the advanced rules are being utilized. As an important note, this pairs very well with the targeting computers the Warhawk almost universally has installed, per configuration. Even amongst their lumbering breakthrough assault mechs, the clans have a preference for these machines to move at a faster rate than their inner sphere counterparts, and thus, the Masakari makes a significant investment in both cost and tonnage into its mobility. Being powered by a 13.5-ton General Systems 340XL engine means that the Warhawk can reach a maximum speed of 64 km per hour, or 6 movement points in the tabletop game. The result of this is that the Warhawk nearly isn't as slow as some of its bigger and potentially more heavily armed counterparts, and is able to therefore move faster than some slower inner sphere breakthrough formations. Clan Technologies means that its engine is also less vulnerable than its inner sphere counterparts for when they use XL equipment. Though not the most heavily guarded clan assault mech ever built, the Warhawk does make significant investments in both tonnage and critical spaces to protect this machine on the battlefield. Clan Ferro Fibrous is extremely effective, giving much more protection per ton, as well as not taking up too many critical slots. And this is the kind of plating utilized in the Battlemech. Having 13.5 tons of the material, this assault mech has a total of 259 points of armor, which is far more than just respectable, especially given that the Warhawk is rarely meant in most of its forms to emulate an up-close battering ram. The most iconic Warhawk, and the one to see the most extensive service, the Prime configuration, is a flawed terror machine on the field of battle. It uses its pod space to do one thing, which is to fire PPC bolts downrange, accurately, and then laugh as their opponents are rendered into molten slag. It does this first by having a 5-ton targeting computer on board helping with its aiming, as well as helping with its general accuracy, when combined with its long-range quirk as mentioned prior. This means that technically, at long range, it suffers only half the penalties one would receive from firing at an extended distance. As a torso weapon, the Warhawk has an LRM-10 launcher with 1 ton of ammunition, when needing to provide backup to its other systems. And those systems are deadly, because it simply has 2 clan ERPPCs in the right arm, and 2 clan ERPPCs in the left arm. Each of these can instantly headcap an enemy mech, should they make their way to the cockpit, and otherwise scorch and blast away any plating on the target. Now, the main problem the Warhawk has is it is too heavily gunned. It cannot fire 3 of its PPCs without overheating. It most definitely can't fire 4, as this will potentially put it at risk of deadly consequences, like an ammunition explosion. So, while the Warhawk is most definitely dangerous and deadly, it is severely hindered by the reality of its thermal limitations. This flaw would be exposed during the clan invasion, and it is one which gave Inner Sphere pilots at least some hope of overwhelming this vicious killer. A radical departure from the Warhawk Prime, the B configuration is a mixed-range combatant. Like many Warhawk variants, it benefits from a targeting computer. To start with, it has a Gauss rifle with 16 rounds of ammunition mounted in its left arm. This provides it with long-range threatening abilities, and doesn't push up its heat gauge almost at all. Next, in its right arm, it possesses 3 clan ER medium lasers, which are a great set of weapons to pummel targets at medium or close ranges. It then goes on to replace out its LRMs for SRMs, as it has a pair of SRM-6s in the right torso, though unfortunately it places their ammunition in the right arm for some reason. These missiles pair well with its other systems, as its Gauss and laser weapons peel off armor, and its SRMs scattershot into exposed plating. Finally, it has an ER small laser in the left arm, as well as a NARC missile beacon in the center torso. Overall, the B configuration is very unique, with a mix of range and effectiveness. It's just not what someone might expect from a Warhawk, upon looking at most of its other configurations. Clearly inspired by the Prime variant, as well as perhaps the C, the H configuration is an interesting remix of the mech, leaning into the technologies that became available after the clan invasion. As with other models, it has a targeting computer. To start with, unlike many other models, it installs 4 extra tons of double heat sinks on board, giving it 48 cooling per turn, which is absolutely wild and still not adequate. First, as far as weapons are concerned, it has a pair of clan large pulse lasers in the right arm, which are long range, accurate, and devastating. When combined with its targeting computer, these weapons are functionally almost never going to miss, at almost any range. It backs these up with an LRM-10 launcher, which is mounted in the arm, along with its ammunition. To add to this though, it has twin heavy large lasers in the left arm, giving it hole-punching ability and hard striking power. These weapons also give it the benefit of being able to headcap as well, though they are less accurate. When combined with its quirk and targeting computers, however, this flaw is somewhat mitigated. The mech does still run hot, but not so much so that it threatens the mech immediately. Overall, it's an interesting take on the Warhawk, though it doesn't really solve many of its flaws, and in many ways it is still inferior to some other similar variants. Most T configurations attempt to look at the prime of any mech and improve on them in some way, in order to almost perfect their original designs. Many of them almost entirely achieve this goal. And some of them are the Warhawk T. Resembling the Warhawk Prime, C, and H, it follows a very similar profile. As per usual, it has a targeting computer. Then things start to get a bit off. First, it has a Rocket Launcher 10, which is a one-shot, potentially deadly weapon. This is a fine addition. After this, it has 2 left arm mounted clan ER PPCs, which are just as devastating, before backing these up with 2 inner sphere plasma rifles, which are mounted in the right arm. The rifle has 30 rounds of ammunition. Now, this all seems fine, until you take into account that it does nothing to address the cooling issues the Prime has. If an Alpha strikes, it will generate 50 points of heat. Now, this isn't exactly as catastrophic as the Prime, but its damage threshold is also much lower. The plasma rifles are good against tanks and infantry as well, which is a bonus, but the mech just feels awkwardly gunned for a clan assault mech, and in terms of real-world functionality, it's outgunned by many of its peers, and many other Warhawks. Overall, this one feels like a bit of a miss, in my opinion. The Warhawk is a strange, terrifying, but flawed creation to emerge from the clans in the 31st century. This monster was meant to rip through any of its targets, but often it is so hindered by other considerations that it may be limited in its ability to do that. Having a reputation of being extremely heavily gunned, the Warhawk often fails to live up to its full potential by not just being poorly synced, but often being critically mismanaged in terms of its weapons loadout, versus its heat-sinking abilities. This makes the Warhawk a mech which must be managed very carefully when trying to get the most out of it on any battlefield. Should a commander and Mechwarrior do their job well, the Warhawk will live up to its terrifying reputation. Should they fail to do that, it will be a machine which is overwhelmed by its opposition, as it struggles to manage its increasingly dire thermal limitations. When the Smoke Jaguars designed it, they designed it like their own war ideals, embracing seemingly only aggression at the expense of nearly everything else, including staying power. Thank you for joining me here today. The Warhawk was a bit of a strange mech to examine, as when you look at most of its configurations, they're very samey, and often have the same problems to a greater or lesser degree. Other Omnimechs tend to have a greater variance of weapon systems or styles. While there are a few standouts that could have been covered that were a bit more different, they also struggled to fill really any niche, much like the B configuration. Either way, if you enjoyed this video, remember to hit like. It does help, I promise. Also, if you want to watch more content like this, have you considered subscribing to the channel? I do frequent updates covering mechs and other Battletech lore, and you'll be happy with the content, I think. Also, if you really want to support the channel and what I do, there is a join button there as well. When you hit it, you'll be given the option to become a channel member. Channel members are the ones who make this channel possible more than anything else, so I want to thank all of you for supporting what I do, because this content is really only made possible because of viewers like you. And with all of that, I will catch you all in the comments section below.